My name is Robert Hayes. I'm 75 years old, and I live in Richmond, Virginia. And today, I'm going to tell you the story of the day my son tried to throw me out of my own house, and how a single sentence I wrote 5 years ago saved everything. I'm sitting in my armchair right now, the same one I've sat in for 40 years. Brown leather, worn smooth in all the right places. It faces the window that looks out onto the front yard, where the dogwood tree blooms white every April. My late wife, Margaret, planted that tree the year we moved in, said it would outlive both of us. She was right about that. She was right about a lot of things. This house, this 3-bedroom colonial on a quiet street in Richmond, isn't just where I live, it's what I built, with my own hands. I was a civil engineer by trade, spent 37 years designing bridges and municipal buildings, but this house was always my real work. The foundation I poured myself, mixing concrete in a wheelbarrow on a Saturday morning in 1978. The oak floors I laid board by board. The stone fireplace I mortared while Margaret handed me stones and told me I was taking too long. Every corner of this place holds a piece of my life, and for a long time, I thought it would hold my son's life too. Derek used to play in these rooms. Toy trucks on the hardwood, forts made of couch cushions. I taught him to measure and level when he was 12, let him help me build the back deck. He was careful then, precise. I thought he'd inherited something from me, some respect for craft, for doing things right. But people change, or maybe they just show you who they always were. Once the stakes get high enough, Derek moved to Washington, D.C. about 15 years ago, got a job with a consulting firm, married a woman named Vanessa, who wore heels that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. They bought a townhouse in Georgetown, started talking about investments and asset optimization like life was a spreadsheet, and slowly, over holidays and the occasional Sunday visit, the way he looked at this house changed. He stopped seeing the dogwood tree, stopped noticing the hand-carved banister or the way the afternoon light falls across the living room floor. He saw square footage. He saw equity. He saw money he thought was his. "Dad, you're sitting on a gold mine here," he'd say, standing in the kitchen where his mother used to bake bread. "This neighborhood's exploding. You could sell, downsize, live somewhere easier to manage." I'd nod, smile, pour him more coffee. But I wasn't smiling inside. I was watching, and I was preparing, because I know my son. I know how he thinks, and I knew even then that one day he'd stop suggesting and start demanding. One day he'd walk through that front door like he owned it, and I'd be ready. Here's what I've learned in 75 years. Betrayal doesn't knock. It doesn't announce itself with warning signs or flashing lights. It walks in through the front door like it owns the place. Sometimes it's wearing a suit. Sometimes it's carrying paperwork. And sometimes it's your own son, looking you in the eye and calling you old man, like you're already gone. Now, if you're watching this and you value justice, real justice, the kind that comes from preparation and patience, hit that subscribe button. And down in the comments, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I want to know I'm not alone in believing that a man's word still means something, that contracts matter, that greed doesn't win just because it shows up wearing a familiar face, because this story is about what happens when greed meets preparation, when arrogance meets the fine print, and when a son forgets that his father didn't get to 75 by being careless. Hit that like button if you believe a man has the right to protect what he's built. Leave a comment. I want to hear from you. Tell me if you've ever had to stand your ground against someone who thought they were smarter than you. Let me show you how it started. I didn't just buy this house. I built it. Every beam, every nail, every square foot. It's not just wood and brick to me. It's 47 years of my life. Let me paint you a picture. It's 1978. I'm 28 years old, married for a couple of years now, working for the city's engineering department. Margaret and I have been saving for 3 years, living in a cramped apartment above a hardware store, eating casseroles and skipping vacations. We find this lot, half an acre on the edge of what was then the outskirts of Richmond, trees everywhere, quiet, room to breathe. We can't afford a builder, so I became one. I designed the house myself. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, an open kitchen that flows into a living room with a stone fireplace. Nothing fancy, nothing showy, just solid, built to last. I hire a crew for the framing, but everything else? That's me and Margaret. And on weekends, my father-in-law and a couple of buddies from the VA. I remember the day we poured the foundation. August heat, 97 degrees, humidity so thick you could chew it. I'm in work boots and a t-shirt soaked through with sweat, mixing concrete in a wheelbarrow, while Margaret keeps me hydrated with iced tea and bologna sandwiches. My hands were raw for weeks, but when that foundation cured, smooth and level, God, that felt like something. The oak floors came from a mill 2 counties over. Real hardwood, tongue and groove. I spent a month on my knees, laying each board, checking the spacing and sanding by hand. Margaret picked the stain, a warm honey color that caught the light just right. When Derek was a toddler, he'd crawl across those floors, and I'd think, he'll walk on these when he brings his own kids here someday. That's what you think when you're young, that what you build will matter to the people you love. The kitchen tiles, white subway tiles with gray grout, were Margaret's choice, too. She spent hours at the design center, coming home with samples, holding them up to the light. This one, she'd say, it's clean, timeless. And she was right. Over 45 years later, those tiles still look good. I still feel like her. The dogwood tree in the front yard, we planted that the day we moved in, April 14th, 1979. Derek was 3 years old, running around the yard while we dug the hole. Margaret said every house needed a tree that bloomed, something to mark the seasons. She watered it every evening that first summer. I talked to it like it was a child. By the time Derek learned to ride a bike on that driveway, the tree was tall enough to shade the porch. This house wasn't just a shelter. It was a legacy. It was proof that if you worked hard and planned smart, you could build something that would hold. But legacy only matters if the people you leave it to understand what it costs. And Derek? Somewhere along the way, Derek stopped understanding. It started small, little comments. Dad, why don't you update this kitchen? Granite countertops would really increase the value. Or, if you knocked out this wall, you'd have an open concept layout. That's what buyers want now. Buyers. Like I was already gone. Like this house was already on the market. Then Vanessa started joining in. She'd walk through during visits, running her hand along the walls, making notes on her phone. You could stage this beautifully, she'd say. Neutral paint, modern fixtures. It will sell in a week. I'd nod, say nothing. But inside, I was keeping score. Because here's the thing about greed. It doesn't hide well. It thinks it's subtle, but it's not. It's there in the way someone looks at your home like it's an investment property, in the way they talk about square footage and comps and market value while standing in the room where you held your wife's hand the night she died. Margaret passed 10 years ago. Lung cancer. She fought it for 18 months, and I held her hand every single day. In this house, in the bedroom we shared for 37 years. Derek visited twice during those 18 months. Twice. Both times he spent more time talking to his real estate friend on the phone than sitting with his mother. That told me everything I needed to know. After Margaret died, Derek's visits became more frequent. Not because he missed me, because he wanted to talk about the future, about what happens to the house, about making things easier when the time comes. I let him talk. I listened. I poured coffee and nodded in all the right places. And then I went to see my lawyer, because I wasn't going to let 47 years of work, 47 years of love and sweat and memories get sold off so my son could upgrade his townhouse or buy his wife another pair of $1,000 shoes. I was going to protect what I built, the way I always have, with planning, with patience, and with one sentence Derek would never bother to read. I signed the deed over to my son 5 years ago, and the moment I did, I knew exactly how this would end. Let me explain. It's October 2020. Derek shows up on a Sunday afternoon, dressed in business casual like he's coming from a conference. He's carrying a leather folder and wearing that smile. The one he uses when he's about to pitch something. I've seen that smile before. It's the one he used when he was 16, trying to talk me into buying him a car. Dad, we need to talk about estate planning, he says, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. You're 70. If something happens to you, this house goes into probate. That could take months. Legal fees, taxes. It's a mess. But if you sign the deed over to me now, you avoid all that. You'll still live here. Nothing changes, but it saves everyone a headache down the road. I sip my coffee, let the silence sit. Then I ask the question I already know the answer to. And you've spoken to a lawyer about this? Of course, he says. It's standard. People do it all the time. I nod slowly. All right, let me talk to Tom. Tom Aldridge is my lawyer, has been for 30 years. We served in Vietnam together, different units, but we crossed paths at a reunion in the 80s and stayed in touch. He's a good man, careful, thorough, the kind of lawyer who reads every line twice and doesn't trust shortcuts. I called Tom the next day. Tell him what Derek proposed. There's a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Tom says, Robert, I can draft that, but you need to understand, if you sign the deed over, the house is legally his. You'd be living there at his discretion. I understand, I say, but I want to add something. A life estate clause, with a reversal trigger. Another pause, longer this time. A reversal trigger? That's right. If he tries to sell the house or force me out while I'm still alive, ownership reverts back to me immediately. It would require filing with the court, but the terms would be clear. He breaches. He loses everything. Tom lets out a low whistle. That's unconventional, but it's legal. You'd need specific language, and he'd have to agree to it. He won't read it, I say. Draft it clean. Bury the clause on page 3. Use the formal language. He'll sign. Tom is quiet for a moment. Then he says, You're sure about this? I'm sure. 2 weeks later, Tom has the paperwork ready. I invite Derek over. We sat at the same kitchen table. Tom lays out the deed transfer, walks through the basics, property description, tax implications, life estate rights. Derek is nodding, half listening, already thinking about what he's going to do with the place once I'm gone. Tom slides the document across the table. It's 6 pages, professional, dense, the kind of legal document that makes your eyes glaze over. Derek flips to the signature page, doesn't read a word, just signs his name, quick and confident, like he's closing a business deal. I signed too, slowly, carefully, because I know what's on page 3, paragraph 7, subsection C. Tom witnesses, notarizes, files it with the county clerk the next day, and just like that, the house is Derek's, on paper. But here's the thing about paper. It only matters if you read all of it. Derek never did, because Derek has always been a skimmer, a rusher, the kind of guy who reads the executive summary and assumes he knows the whole report. He did it in high school with book reports. He did it in college with lease agreements. And he did it with the deed to the house his father built. He saw what he wanted to see. His name on the title. Ownership. Control. He didn't see the tripwire. I knew he wouldn't. Because I know my son. I know his arrogance. I know he thinks he's the smartest person in every room. That he's always 3 steps ahead, that old men like me are relics who don't understand the modern world. And I let him think that, because underestimating your opponent is the oldest mistake in the world. Tom asked me, after Derek left, why I went through with it. Why did I give him the rope? I told him the truth, because I'd rather know now than later. If Derek's going to betray me, I want to see it coming, and I want to be ready. Tom shook his head, but he didn't argue. He just made sure I kept a copy of that deed in a fireproof safe, along with his business card and a note that said, Call me the moment he tries anything. I didn't have to wait long. 5 years. That's how long it took. 5 years of Derek slowly convincing himself that the house was his, that I was just an old man living on borrowed time, that he could cash out whenever he wanted. And now the bills come due. My son walked into my living room, threw a real estate listing on my coffee table, and told me I had 6 weeks to get out of the house I built. And he smiled while he said it. It's a Tuesday morning in April. Early. The dogwood tree outside is in full bloom, white petals bright against the blue sky. I'm sitting in my armchair, reading the newspaper, drinking coffee from the same mug I've used for 20 years. The house is quiet, peaceful. Then I hear the front door open. No knock, no doorbell, just the sound of the lock turning and footsteps on the hardwood. Derek. He strides into the living room like he's walking onto a stage. His face is flushed, red around the collar, eyes bright with something I can't quite name. Excitement, maybe, or triumph. Behind him, Vanessa lingers in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. Derek doesn't say hello. Don't ask how I'm doing. He just slaps a piece of paper down on the coffee table in front of me. It's a real estate listing, color printout, professional photos of my house, exterior shots taken from the street, the kind any realtor could capture without entering the property. I've got a buyer, he says. His voice is loud, too loud. Cash offer, $780,000. We close in 6 weeks. You need to start packing, Dad. I found you a nice little condo in Chesterfield. 2 bedrooms, ground floor, close to a grocery store. It'll be easier for you. I set my coffee down slowly. Look at the listing. Look back at him. I haven't said anything yet. Just let the silence stretch. Derek shifts his weight. His confidence flickers. Just for a second. Then he doubles down. This house is worth too much to just sit here, he says. You don't need all this space. And Vanessa and I, we've been thinking about our future. Kids, maybe. A bigger place in Arlington. This sale makes sense for everyone. I fold the newspaper, set it aside. Then I ask, calm as Sunday morning, can I see the deed? He blinks. What? The deed? You said the house is yours. I'd like to see the paperwork. His jaw tightens. He pulls a folder from under his arm and tosses it on the table. It's right here. You signed it over 5 years ago, remember? It's done. The house is mine now, old man. Time to move on. Old man. He says it like I'm already on the ground. I open the folder, pull out the deed. 6 pages, just like I remember. I flip to page 3, paragraph 7, subsection C, and I read it, out loud, slowly. In the event that the grantee attempts to sell, transfer, or otherwise dispose of the property, or demands that the grantor vacate said property during the grantor's lifetime, the grantee shall be deemed in material breach of this agreement. Upon such breach, full ownership and all rights shall revert to the grantor, subject to filing with the appropriate court to effectuate said reversion, rendering any such attempted transaction null and void. Derek's face goes blank. Then I was confused, then pale. What the hell is that? He says. I look up at him. My son, standing in the living room of the house I built, holding a listing for a sale that will never happen. That, I say quietly, is the clause you didn't read. I put on my reading glasses, opened the folder, and watched my son realize, too late, that he'd never actually read the document he was waving in my face. I reach into my shirt pocket, slowly, pull out my reading glasses, the bifocals with the wire frames I've had for 10 years. I unfold them, put them on, take my time. Derek shifts his weight. His arms are crossed now, jaw tight. He's trying to look confident, but I can see the impatience bleeding through. He wants this over. He wants me nodding, defeated, already mentally packing boxes. Vanessa pulls out her phone, starts scrolling, like this is already settled, like I'm just an old man who needs a minute to catch up to reality. I opened the folder. The deed is right on top. 6 pages, cream-colored paper, laser printed, clean, professional. I've seen this document before, signed it 5 years ago at this very table, but I look at it now like it's the first time, because Derek needs to see me looking, needs to feel the weight of what's about to happen. I start with page 1, property description, legal boundaries, tax parcel number. I read every line. My finger traces the text. Derek scoffs. It's all there, Dad. Legal. Done. You signed it. I don't know what you're looking for. I don't answer. Just turn to page 2. Grantor and grantee names, date of transfer, notary seal. I check the signature. Mine in blue ink, same as always. Everything looks correct. Everything is correct. Page 3. This is where it gets interesting. I slow down even more. Read each paragraph. Each subsection. My lips move slightly, the way they do when I'm concentrating. I can feel Derek's irritation building across the table. He wants to interrupt, wants to grab the document back and tell me I'm wasting time, but he doesn't, because somewhere deep down, beneath all that arrogance, there's a flicker of doubt, a tiny voice asking, what if? I flip back to page 2, then forward to page 3 again. I'm comparing language now, cross-referencing, my engineering training kicking in. Check your work, verify your assumptions, never trust a conclusion until you've tested it twice. A full minute passes, maybe more. The only sound is the ticking of the clock on the mantel and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Derek breaks first. What? You don't believe me? His voice is sharp, defensive. You think I'm lying? That's the deed, Dad. Black and white. The house is mine. Has been for 5 years. You want to call Tom Aldridge yourself? Go ahead. He'll tell you the same thing. I look up. My expression doesn't change. I don't smile. Don't frown. Just meet his eyes over the top of my glasses. Then I tap a paragraph on page 3 with my index finger. I believe you didn't read this, I say. The room goes still. Not quiet, still. Like the air itself just stopped moving. Vanessa's thumb freezes on her phone screen. Derek's mouth opens, but nothing comes out. I tap the paragraph again. Once, twice. Right here, I say. Paragraph 7, section C. You remember signing this, Derek? He blinks. His confidence is cracking. I can see it in the way his shoulders tense, the way his eyes dart to the document and then back to me. I signed the whole thing, he says, but his voice is different now. Smaller, less sure. You did. I agree. But did you read it? He doesn't answer. Because we both know the truth. He never read past page 1. I read him the clause he never bothered to look at, and I watched the color drain from his face as he realized he'd just lost everything. I clear my throat, adjust my glasses, and I read aloud, slow and clear, every single word. The grantor retains a life estate in the property, including exclusive rights of occupancy, use, and control until death. The grantee holds title subject to said life estate. Any attempt by the grantee to sell, encumber, or transfer the property, or to demand vacation of the premises by the grantor prior to the grantor's death shall be deemed a material breach of this agreement. Upon such breach, full ownership and title shall revert to the grantor, subject to filing of appropriate documentation with the circuit court to effectuate said reversion, at which point any pending transaction shall become null and void. I pause, let it sink in. Then I look up. Derek is staring at me. His face has gone from flushed to pale. His mouth is slightly open, like he's trying to process a language he doesn't understand. I set the document down on the coffee table, fold my hands. Let me put that in plain English for you, I say. A life estate means I have the right to live here, control this property, and make all decisions about it until the day I die. You hold the title, yes, but it's not really yours until I'm gone. And the second part, the part you really should have read, says that if you try to sell this house while I'm still alive, or if you demand that I leave, the entire deed transfer reverses. I file the reversion with the court, and the house becomes mine again. Derek's mouth moves. No, sound comes out. You just tried to sell it, Derek. I continued, my voice calm, steady. You brought a buyer. You printed a listing. You told me I had 6 weeks to pack, which means, as of this moment, you've breached the terms of the deed. And according to paragraph 7, section C, that breach gives me the right to reverse the transfer and reclaim full ownership. I lean forward slightly. The house will be mine again, not yours. Mine. The silence that follows is so complete. I can hear the dogwood branches tapping against the window in the breeze. Vanessa's phone slips in her hand. She catches it, fumbles, nearly drops it. Her eyes are wide now, locked on Derek. Derek finally finds his voice. It comes out strangled. That's not. It's right there, I say, tapping the page again. You signed it. I signed it. Tom Aldridge notarized it. It's been filed with the county clerk for 5 years. Legal and binding. His face cycles through emotions like a slot machine. Confusion, disbelief, anger, panic. He grabs the deed from the table, nearly ripping it. His hands shake as he flips to page 3, scanning frantically. I watch him read it, watch his eyes move across the words, watch the exact moment it clicks. His hands drop. The document sags in his grip. "No," he whispers, then louder. "No, that's not. Tom wouldn't have. Tom did exactly what I asked him to do," I say. "He drafted a life estate deed with a reversal clause. It's not common, but it's perfectly legal. He even walked you through the document before you signed it. You were there, Derek. You just weren't paying attention." Derek's breathing is shallow now, fast. He looks at Vanessa, desperate, like she might have an answer. She just stares back, her face pale as paper. "You want to know why I insisted on that clause?" I ask, my voice quiet now, almost gentle. "Because I know you, son. I know how you think. And I knew that the moment you saw dollar signs, you'd forget I was still living. You'd forget this house isn't just property. It's my home, the home I built with my own hands, the home where your mother died." His jaw trembles. "I hoped I'd never need that clause," I say. "I really did. I hoped you'd prove me wrong, that you'd wait, that you'd respect what this place means." I stand up slowly, my knees creaking the way they do these days. "But you didn't wait," I say. "You walked in here with a listing and told me to pack, called me old man, like I was already in the way. So here we are." Derek's voice cracks. "You planned this. You set me up." "No," I say quietly. "I protected myself. With a legal document you had every opportunity to read. You chose not to. That's not my fault, Derek. That's yours." I meet his eyes. My son, the boy I taught to measure and level, the man who just tried to throw me out onto the street. "The house will be mine again," I say, "just like it should have stayed." My son looked at me and said, "You can't do this." And I said, "I didn't." "You did." Derek's face twists. The panic hardens into something uglier. Anger. Desperation. "You're lying," he snaps, his voice rising. There's no way. Tom wouldn't have let you do this without telling me. You tricked me. This is fraud or coercion or something. I'll fight this." He's gripping the deed so hard the pages are crumpling. His knuckles are white. I stay standing. Keep my voice level. "I didn't trick you, Derek. I gave you a legal document. You signed it. You had every opportunity to read it, to ask questions, to have your own lawyer review it. You chose not to. Because you—" He stops. "Start again. You made it sound like it was just a formality, like nothing would change." "Nothing did change," I say, "until you tried to sell the house out from under me." Vanessa steps forward now, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She's trying to keep her composure, but I can see the fear behind her eyes. "Mr. Hayes," she says, her voice strained and too polite. There has to be a way to work this out. Derek didn't mean—" "Yes, he did," I interrupt, looking at her. "He meant every word. He had a buyer. He took photos of my house from the street without asking permission. He told me to start packing. Those aren't accidents, Vanessa. That's the intent." Derek slams the deed down on the coffee table. "You can't do this," he shouts. "I already signed a purchase agreement with the buyer. If this sale falls through, I lose the earnest money, $5,000. We need this, Dad. Do you understand? We need this sale." And there it is. The truth. Not want. Need. I tilt my head slightly. "Why do you need it, Derek?" His mouth opens, closes. He looks at Vanessa. She looks away. "That's what I thought," I say quietly. "You got in over your head, didn't you? Spent more than you should have. Maybe the Georgetown townhouse costs more than you planned. Maybe there are debts I don't know about. Doesn't matter. What matters is you decided the solution was to cash in on the house I built, the house your mother loved, without asking me, without considering for 1 second that I might still need it." "You don't need all this space," Derek starts. "That's not your call to make," I say, my voice harder now. "This is my house, my home, and you tried to take it because you thought I was too old or too stupid to stop you." He flinches. "Look away. You shouldn't have tried to sell a house you didn't fully own," I say. Derek's hands curl into fists. For a moment, I think he might yell again, might throw something. But then he just exhales hard through his nose and reaches for his phone. "Fine," he says, his voice cold. "I'm calling a lawyer. We'll see what they say about this bullshit clause." I shrug. "Go ahead. Tom Aldridge drafted this. His number's in the file. He'll tell you exactly what I just told you, that you signed a binding agreement, you breached it, and now the house reverts to me once I file the paperwork with the court. But if you want to waste money on another lawyer's opinion, be my guest." Derek stares at me, really stares, like he's seeing me for the first time and doesn't recognize what he's looking at. "I can't believe you do this to your own son," he says, and that almost makes me laugh. "I didn't do anything, Derek," I say. "You did. You brought the listing, you made the threats, you called me old man and told me to move to a condo. All I did was read the document you never bothered to look at." His jaw works. His eyes are glassy now, but I can't tell if it's rage or shame or something else. He spins on his heel and walks toward the door. Vanessa hesitates, looking back at me. Her face is pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. For a second, I think she might say something, apologize maybe, or try to smooth it over. But she doesn't. She just turns and follows Derek. The front door opens, then slams shut so hard the windows rattle. And just like that, they're gone. After my son left, I sat alone in the house he tried to steal from me, and I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt like I'd lost my son twice. The house is silent, not peaceful, just empty. I lower myself back into my armchair. My legs feel heavy. My chest feels heavier. Outside, I hear Derek's car start. The engine revs. Too loud, too aggressive. Tires squeal as he peels out of the driveway, and then the sound fades down the street until there's nothing left but the wind and the birds. I sat there, staring at the coffee table, at the deed still lying there, crumpled from Derek's grip, at the real estate listing with its glossy photos and bold price tag, $780,000. That's what he thought this place was worth. What he thought I was worth. I look around the room. The stone fireplace Margaret and I built together. The oak floors I laid board by board. The mantel is lined with photos. Derek as a toddler in Margaret's arms. Derek at 10 holding a baseball glove I'd bought him for his birthday. Derek at his high school graduation, grinning in his cap and gown. Me and Margaret on either side of him. When did it change? When did he stop being that kid and become this? Was it after Margaret died? Was it Vanessa's influence? Her taste for things we could never afford? Her constant measuring of life in terms of square footage and market comps? Or was it always there, buried under the surface, waiting for the right moment to show itself? Maybe I didn't want to see it. Maybe I made excuses. Told myself he was busy, stressed, and focused on his career, that he'd come around, that deep down, he still cared. But you can't unsee what I just saw. You can't unhear your own son calling you old man and telling you to pack your bags. I think about the life estate clause, about the day I asked Tom to add it. Tom had raised an eyebrow and asked me if I was sure, and I'd told him yes, because even then, 5 years ago, when Derek first brought up estate planning, I had a feeling, a quiet, nagging suspicion that if I handed over control without protection, I'd regret it. I'd hoped I was wrong. God, I'd hoped. But hope isn't a strategy. Hope is what you feel when you don't want to face the truth. And the truth was, I knew my son better than I wanted to admit. I'd prepared for this moment not because I wanted it to happen, but because I couldn't afford to be blindsided. And now, here I am, sitting in the house I built, the house I just fought to keep. And instead of feeling victorious, I just feel tired and sad. Because I didn't just lose Derek today. I lost him years ago. I just didn't want to admit it until he walked through that door with a listing in his hand and greed in his eyes. I lean my head back against the chair, close my eyes, let the silence settle over me like a blanket. Tomorrow I'll call Tom, make sure the reversal is filed properly with the court, make sure Derek can't pull any more tricks. But today I'm just a father who had to choose between his home and his son, and I chose the home. Because at least the home has always been honest about what it is. My son wasn't always like this. There was a time when I was proud to call him my boy, and that's what makes this hurt so much. I need you to understand something. Derek didn't come out of the womb greedy. He wasn't born looking at his father's house like it was an ATM. There was a version of him, a good version, that I raised in these rooms. He was a curious kid, thoughtful, the kind of boy who'd spend an hour building something with Legos, then tear it down and start over because he wanted to get it right. When he was 8, I taught him how to use a level and a tape measure. He'd follow me around during home repairs, handing me tools, asking why we did things a certain way. "Why do you check it twice, Dad?" "Because fixing a mistake later costs more than doing it right the first time." He listened. He learned. I thought those lessons stuck. Derek got good grades, not because Margaret and I pushed, because he wanted to. He earned a scholarship to Virginia Tech, studied business, graduated with honors, got a job with a consulting firm in DC right out of college. I remember the day he called to tell us he'd been hired. Margaret cried. She was so proud. And for a while, he kept coming home, once a month, sometimes more. He'd show up on a Saturday morning, help me rake leaves or fix the gutters or winterize the house before the first frost. We'd sit at the kitchen table afterward, drink coffee, talk about his work, his life. He seemed happy, grounded. When Margaret got sick, lung cancer, diagnosed in late 2013, Derek was there, not just at the funeral, during. He took time off work, stayed at the house for weeks at a time, sat with his mother while I ran errands, held her hand when the pain got bad, helped me sort through her medications and hospice schedules. The night she died, Derek was sitting beside me. We didn't say much, just sat there in the bedroom she and I had shared for 37 years, watching her breathe until she didn't anymore. And then Derek put his hand on my shoulder and said, "I'm here, Dad. Whatever you need." I believed him. After the funeral, he stayed a full week, helped me go through Margaret's clothes, her jewelry, the boxes of photos in the attic. It wasn't easy, but he was patient, kind. Every time I got choked up looking at an old picture or one of her sweaters, he'd just nod and give me space. I remember thinking, sitting in this armchair, the night he finally drove back to DC, I raised him right. Margaret and I, we did good. That was 2015. 2 years later, Derek met Vanessa at a networking event, some fundraiser in Georgetown. She worked in luxury real estate, came from old money, carried herself with the kind of confidence that turns heads in a room. He called me 3 weeks later to tell me he'd met someone. Sounded excited, happy. I was happy for him. But within 6 months, something shifted. The visits got shorter, the phone calls less frequent. When he did come home, he seemed distracted, always checking his phone, always in a hurry to get back to the city. And he started making comments, little ones at first, easy to ignore. "Dad, have you thought about what this place is worth? You know, property values in Richmond are going up. You could sell, invest the money, live off the interest. It's a lot of house for one person, don't you think?" I'd shrug, change the subject. But I noticed the way he looked at the rooms now, not with nostalgia, but with appraisal, like he was calculating square footage instead of remembering the Christmas mornings we spent here, the birthday parties, the nights Margaret read him stories before bed. And I noticed that the more time he spent with Vanessa, the more those comments came. Not from him, originally, from her. But slowly, Derek started repeating them, agreeing with them, making them his own. By the time they got married in 2018, the son I knew, the one who helped me winterize the house and sat with his mother while she died, was starting to fade, and in his place was someone I didn't quite recognize, someone who looked at his childhood home and saw dollar signs. My son married a woman who looked at my home, the home I built, and called it a wasted asset, and slowly he started to agree with her. Let me be clear. I tried to like Vanessa. I did. She came from money, old family wealth, the kind that builds country clubs and names buildings after great-grandfathers. Her father owned commercial properties in Maryland. Her mother sat on charity boards and hosted fundraisers where a plate of dinner cost more than my monthly utility bill. Vanessa worked in luxury real estate, high-end condos, historic townhouses, estates with views of the Potomac. She knew how to dress, how to talk, how to walk into a room and make people notice her. And she was polished, always polished, hair perfect, nails perfect, outfits that looked like they came from magazines. Derek introduced us at a restaurant in Richmond, some upscale place downtown where the menu didn't list prices. She smiled, shook my hand, asked polite questions about my work, my house, my life. She said all the right things, but I could see it in her eyes. The way she looked at me, not unkindly, but like I was something quaint, something from a different era, a relic. Still, I told myself I was being unfair, judgmental. Maybe she was just nervous, maybe I was projecting. But then came the wedding. Georgetown venue, 200 guests, open bar, the kind of affair that costs what I used to make in a year. Derek and Vanessa paid for most of it, but I could tell it stretched them. I offered to help, but Vanessa waved me off. "We've got it covered, Mr. Hayes. This is important to us." Within 6 months of the wedding, things started changing faster. They bought a townhouse in Georgetown, 4 stories, narrow and tall, brick facade, iron railings, beautiful place. Also expensive, way more expensive than Derek's salary could comfortably handle, even with Vanessa's income. But Vanessa wanted it, and Derek wanted to give her what she wanted. That's when the hints started becoming suggestions, and the suggestions started becoming pressure. "Dad, you're sitting on a gold mine here. This neighborhood's exploding. Houses like yours are going for $750,000, maybe more. Why stay in Richmond? You could sell, move somewhere easier. A condo, maybe. Free up some capital. Live off the interest." He started using words that didn't sound like him. Liquidity, asset optimization, portfolio diversification, corporate jargon, Vanessa's language. He started dressing differently too. Expensive suits, designer shoes. A watch I know cost more than my first car. And when they visited, which was less and less, Vanessa would walk through the house like she was conducting an inspection, noting the outdated kitchen, the lack of granite countertops, the old appliances. She'd tap things with her fingernail and smile that polite, empty smile. Thanksgiving 2019. They came for dinner. I'd spent the morning cooking. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, the works. Same meal Margaret used to make. We were sitting at the table, and Vanessa looked around, wrinkled her nose slightly and said, "It smells old in here, like mothballs and dust. Have you thought about updating the ventilation, Mr. Hayes? Or maybe moving somewhere more appropriate for your age? Somewhere with less upkeep?" Derek laughed, nervously. "Vanessa, come on." But he didn't defend me, didn't say the house was fine, that it was his childhood home, that his mother had chosen every detail with care. He just laughed and changed the subject. I didn't say anything, just passed the gravy and asked if anyone wanted more rolls. But I remembered. I remember everything. I remembered the way she looked at the house, not as a home, but as wasted potential, wasted money, a resource that should be liquidated and redistributed. And I remembered the way Derek nodded along, the way he stopped defending this place, stopped defending me. That night, after they left, I sat in this armchair and thought about Margaret, about what she'd say if she'd heard that, about how she'd feel knowing the daughter-in-law she never got to meet called our home old and inappropriate. She'd have been heartbroken. So was I. But more than that, I was awake, clear-eyed. I could see where this was heading. I could see what Derek was becoming under Vanessa's influence. Or maybe I was just finally seeing what had always been there, buried under the surface, waiting for the right person to bring it out. Either way, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. My son was changing, and the house I built, the house his mother loved, was becoming nothing more than a line item on a balance sheet. The day I told my son I wouldn't give him $50,000, I stopped being his father. I became a bank he couldn't access. It was February 2020, a Tuesday evening. I was making dinner when my phone rang. Derek. "Hey Dad, got a minute?" His voice was tight, strained. I could hear traffic in the background, horns honking. He was walking somewhere, probably leaving work. "Sure," I said, turning down the stove. "What's going on?" "I need to ask you something." A pause. "Vanessa and I, we're in a bit of a bind. We did some renovations on The townhouse. New kitchen. Bathrooms. Refinished the floors. It came in over budget. Significantly over. I waited. Didn't say anything. Let him get to the point. I need a loan, he said. 50,000. Just short-term, Dad. 6 months, maybe a year. I'll pay you back with interest if you want. We just need to cover the gap until my bonus comes through. $50,000. I sat down at the kitchen table, looked out the window at the dogwood tree, bare branches black against the winter sky. Why don't you and Vanessa scale back? I asked. Cut expenses. Sell the townhouse if it's too much to handle. Sell? His voice sharpened. Dad, we just bought it 2 years ago. The market's not great right now. We'd lose money. Then live smaller. Stop renovating. You don't understand how expensive DC is. He was getting defensive now, irritated. Everything costs more here. And Vanessa, she's used to a certain standard. I can't just... Derek. I kept my voice calm. Steady. I worked for 40 years to secure my retirement. I've got enough to live on, but I'm not rich. $50,000 is a significant chunk of what I have left, and I'm not gambling it on your lifestyle. Silence on the other end. Cold, heavy silence. My lifestyle, he repeated. That's what you think this is? You bought a house you couldn't afford, I said. You renovated it beyond your means, and now you're asking me to cover the difference. That's not an emergency, Derek. That's a choice you made. I'm your son. His voice was tight now. Angry. I'm asking for help, and I'm telling you no. I love you, but I'm not doing this. You're a grown man. You made financial decisions without consulting me, and now you want me to bail you out. That's not how this works. Another long silence. Then, fine. I get it. Thanks for nothing, Dad. The line went dead. He hung up on me. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the screen. My hand was shaking, not from anger, from sadness, because I knew what that call meant. I knew what I'd just become in his eyes. Not a father, not someone who loved him and wanted the best for him, just an obstacle, a resource that refused to cooperate. For 8 months, we didn't speak. Not a call, not a text, not a visit, nothing. I reached out twice, left voicemails, asked how he was doing. He didn't respond. Then, in October, he called, said he wanted to clear the air. We met for lunch in Richmond, neutral ground. He apologized, sort of, said he'd been stressed, that he understood why I'd said no, that he didn't mean to get angry, but something had changed. I could feel it, the way he looked at me across the table, polite, distant, like I was someone he had to tolerate rather than someone he loved. He asked about the house, about my health, about whether I'd thought any more about downsizing, and I knew then. I knew he hadn't let it go. He was just biding his time, waiting, watching, planning. That night, I called Tom Aldridge. Tom, I said, I want to talk about estate planning, specifically about the deed to this house. All right, he said slowly. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I don't trust my son anymore, and I need to protect myself. Tom didn't argue, didn't try to talk me out of it. He just said, come by the office tomorrow, we'll figure it out. And we did. I gave my son 5 years to prove me wrong. He didn't. So the day he tried to take my home, I was ready. Tom's office smelled like old paper and coffee. I sat across from him at his desk, the same desk where we'd reviewed contracts and wills and legal documents for 30 years. Tell me what you're worried about, Tom said, leaning back in his chair, hands folded. Derek's changed, I said. Or maybe he hasn't changed. Maybe I'm just finally seeing him clearly. Either way, I don't trust him. He looks at this house like it's already his, like I'm just borrowing it until I die. And you think he'd try to force you out? I think if he got the deed, he'd find a way to sell it out from under me. Tell me it's for my own good, that he found me a nice place in a retirement community, that I'd be happier, safer, more comfortable. Tom nodded slowly. You want a life estate? I want a life estate with a reversal trigger, I said. If he tries anything, selling, transferring, forcing me out, I can file with the court to reverse the transfer. The terms would be clear in the deed. He breaches, he loses everything. Tom picked up a pen, tapped it against the desk. That's aggressive, Robert. and it could cause serious conflict. If he respects me, he'll never trigger it, I said. If he doesn't, I need protection. Tom studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, let's draft it. It took 2 weeks to get the language right. Tom was meticulous. Every clause is airtight. Every loophole closed. The life estate gave me full control. Occupancy, use, decision-making, until I died. The reversal trigger was crystal clear. Any attempt to sell or force me out would allow me to file for reversion, voiding the transfer. When Derek came to sign, I watched him carefully, watched the way he skimmed the pages, nodded without reading, signed his name with a flourish, like he'd just closed a business deal. Tom walked him through the basics. Derek didn't ask questions, didn't request clarification, just signed and handed the pen back. Thanks for doing this, Dad, he said, smiling. Makes everything simpler. I signed too, slowly, deliberately, and I kept a copy in the fireproof safe in my bedroom closet, right next to Margaret's jewelry and our marriage certificate. That was 5 years ago. 5 years of watching and waiting. 5 years of Derek visiting less and less, calling only on holidays, treating me like an obligation rather than his father. 5 years of hoping I was wrong, that he'd prove me paranoid, that he'd look at this house and remember his mother's kitchen, his childhood bedroom, the driveway where he learned to ride a bike, but he didn't. He looked at it and saw $780,000. And when he walked through that door last Tuesday, with a real estate listing in his hand and told me I had 6 weeks to pack, when he called me old man and smiled like he'd already won, I wasn't surprised. I was sad, tired, heartbroken, but I wasn't surprised because I'd given him 5 years. 5 years to show me who he really was. And when he finally did, I was ready. 3 days later, my son hired a lawyer to sue me for my own house. The lawyer lasted 2 hours before he realized he had nothing. It's Friday morning. I'm in the kitchen making coffee when my phone rings. Unknown number. Richmond area code. I answer. Hello? Mr. Robert Hayes? The voice is male, clipped, professional, the kind of tone that tries to sound authoritative but comes off aggressive. Speaking. My name is Mitchell Crane. I'm an attorney representing your son, Derek Hayes, in a property dispute regarding 412 Sycamore Street. I'm calling to inform you that my client intends to challenge the validity of certain clauses in the deed transfer executed in October 2020. I set my coffee mug down, pull out a chair, and sit. Go on, I say. Crane clears his throat. The so-called life estate reversal clause is ambiguous at best and potentially unenforceable. My client acted in good faith when entering into a purchase agreement for the property. Your attempt to void that agreement based on a dubious legal provision constitutes interference with contractual relations and may expose you to significant financial liability. I let him finish. Let the silence sit for a moment. Then I ask, calm as Sunday morning, are you familiar with Virginia Code Section 55-100, Mr. Crane? A pause. I'm familiar with Virginia property law, yes. Then you know that life estates are well-established legal instruments in this state, and that conditional reversions based on breach of terms are enforceable as long as the language is clear and unambiguous, which, in this case, it is. Another pause, longer this time. My attorney is Tom Aldridge, I continue. He's been practicing property law in Richmond for 40 years. He drafted the deed your client signed. I suggest you give him a call, have him call you, and you two can work out the details. In the meantime, tell Derek he's wasting money he clearly doesn't have. Crane's voice hardens. Mr. Hayes, I'd advise you not to. Good day, Mr. Crane. I hung up. Then I sit there, staring at my coffee. My hand is steady. My breathing is even. But inside I feel something heavy settling in my chest. My son hired a lawyer to sue me, to take my house, not because he has a case, but because he's desperate. Because he thought he could intimidate me into backing down, thought an aggressive phone call from an attorney would make me fold. He doesn't know me as well as he thinks he does. 2 hours later, my phone rings again. This time it's Tom. Robert, he says, and I can hear the amusement in his voice. I just got off the phone with Mitchell Crane, and he's backing down. The second I cited the statute and offered to send him copies of the precedent cases. He realized he had nothing. He tried to bluster for a minute, claimed the language was ambiguous, that there might be grounds for undue influence, but he knows it's garbage. Derek has no case. I exhale slowly. So it's over? It's over. Tom confirms. Crane will advise Derek to drop it. If Derek pushes anyway, he'll be throwing money away on a lawsuit he can't win. And based on what Crane said, I don't think Derek has money to throw away. No, I say quietly. He doesn't. You okay, Robert? I look out the window. The dogwood tree is budding now, tiny green leaves just starting to unfurl. I'm fine, I say. Thanks, Tom. Anytime. I hung up. Sit there in the quiet kitchen. The coffee's gone cold in my mug. Derek has no case. The lawyer backed down. The house will be mine again once I file the reversion paperwork. I won. So why do I feel so hollow? Then my daughter-in-law sent me an email. She tried to guilt me, manipulate me, and blame me for their financial mess. I responded with one sentence. It arrives on a Tuesday evening, exactly 1 week after Derek walked out of my house. I'm sitting at my computer, paying bills online, when the notification pops up. Email from Vanessa Hayes. Subject line, please reconsider. I stare at the screen for a moment, considered deleting it without reading, but curiosity wins. I click. Dear Mr. Hayes, I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing because I'm deeply concerned about what's happened between you and Derek. He's been devastated by this situation. I've never seen him so upset. I know there's been a misunderstanding about the house and the deed. Derek didn't mean to upset you or make you feel disrespected. He was trying to help, to protect your interests and make things easier for you in the long run. He's been under enormous stress lately, and I think that stress affected his judgment. But his heart was in the right place. The truth is, we're in a terrible financial position right now. The renovations on our townhouse cost far more than we anticipated, and we've had some unexpected expenses. The sale of your house was going to solve a lot of problems for us. Losing it has put us in a very difficult spot. Derek has been struggling with stress and anxiety for months. This situation has made it so much worse. I'm genuinely worried about him, Mr. Hayes. I'm worried that losing this sale, losing his relationship with you, might push him over the edge. I'm asking you, as his father, to please reconsider. I know the deed says certain things, but surely there's a way to work this out. Derek made a mistake. He didn't read the document carefully enough. But does that mistake really deserve this kind of punishment? I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive him, to let the sale go through. It would mean everything to us, and it might save your relationship with your son. With respect, Vanessa. I read it once, then again, slower, and I see every manipulation tactic laid out like cards on a table. Devastated, emotional appeal, make me feel guilty for defending myself, misunderstanding, reframe Derek's calculated attempt to evict me as an innocent mistake. His heart was in the right place. Excuse his behavior. Suggest I'm overreacting. Terrible financial position. Victimhood. Make their poor financial decisions my responsibility. Stress and anxiety. Implied threat. Suggest that if something bad happens to Derek, it'll be my fault. Punishment. Blame me for the consequences of Derek's own actions. Save your relationship with your son. Ultimate guilt trip. Frame capitulation as love and resistance as cruelty. I sit back in my chair, look at the screen, and I think about Margaret. What would she say if she'd read this email? She'd say Vanessa was a manipulator, that this wasn't a concern, it was strategy, that a woman who truly cared about her husband wouldn't encourage him to betray his father in the first place, and she'd tell me to stand my ground. I move the cursor to reply. Type one sentence. The house remains mine. I wish you both well. I read it over. Consider adding more. Explaining. Defending. But no, this is enough. I hit send. Then I close the laptop and walk away. For 3 days, I check my email obsessively, half expecting another message. A plea. A threat. Something. But there's nothing. No follow-up from Vanessa. No call from Derek. No lawyer letters or desperate voicemails. Just silence. And I realize they're done. They tried the legal route. They tried the emotional route. Both failed. Now they've moved on to whatever plan comes next, or maybe just to licking their wounds and figuring out how to survive the mess they made. Either way, they're not my problem anymore. I sit in my armchair that evening, looking out at the dogwood tree, and I feel something shift. Not relief, exactly. Not happiness. Just finality. Whatever relationship I had with my son, it's over. Not paused, not damaged. Over. And as much as that hurts, there's a strange peace in knowing where I stand. I don't have to wonder anymore. Don't have to hope he'll change or worry about the next betrayal. It's done. People in town started asking questions, and I could have told them everything. But I didn't, because despite what my son did, I wasn't going to humiliate him publicly. It starts with Paul, my next-door neighbor. We're both outside on a Saturday morning, me trimming the hedge along the property line, him mowing his lawn. He shuts off the mower and walks over, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Hey, Robert," he says, his tone careful, cautious. "Everything all right with Derek?" I pause, clippers in hand. Look at him. Why do you ask? Paul shifts his weight. I saw him here last week. I heard some raised voices. Didn't mean to eavesdrop, but you know how it is. The walls are thin, windows are open. I nod slowly. Set the clippers down. Family disagreement. We'll work it out. Paul studies my face, clearly wanting more, but I don't give it to him. Just pick up the clippers and go back to trimming. "All right," he says after a moment. "Well, if you need anything." "Appreciate it, Paul." He walks back to his mower. Start it up, but I can feel him watching me as I work. Word spreads. Of course it does. This is Richmond. People talk. At the hardware store on Tuesday, I'm buying a replacement part for the kitchen faucet when Bill Hendricks, a guy I've known for 20 years, comes up to me in the plumbing aisle. "Robert, haven't seen you in a while. How have you been?" "Good, Bill. You?" "Can't complain." He pauses, scratches his jaw. "Hey, I heard Derek was trying to sell your place. Is that true?" I keep my expression neutral. "Where'd you hear that?" "Around." He shrugs. "You know how it is. Someone saw a listing or something. I just thought, well, seems sudden. Are you thinking about moving?" "No," I say simply. "Misunderstanding." It's settled now. Bill nods, but I can see the curiosity burning behind his eyes. He wants details, wants the story. I want to know what happened between me and my son so he can repeat it over coffee at the diner. I don't give it to him. "Good seeing you, Bill." I pick up the faucet part and head to the register. At church on Sunday, it's worse. 3 different people I've known for decades, approach me after the service with variations of the same question. "Is Derek all right? Are you and Derek having trouble? I heard something about the house. Is everything okay?" Each time I smile. Keep it brief. We're fine. Just working through some things. Nothing to worry about. Each time, they press a little harder. But I heard, "It's handled. Thank you for asking." And then I walk away. Because here's the thing. I could tell them. I could lay out exactly what Derek did. How he tried to evict me from my own house. How he called me old man and told me to pack. How he hired a lawyer to sue me after I stopped him. I could paint him as the villain he acted like. Could tell them about Vanessa's manipulative email and Derek's financial desperation. Could let the whole town know that my son is a greedy, entitled man who tried to steal his father's home. And they'd believe me, because I'm Robert Hayes. I've lived here for 47 years. I've been a deacon at this church, served on the town planning board, helped neighbors fix roofs and build decks and navigate property disputes. People trust me, but I won't do it. Not because Derek deserves my protection. He doesn't. But because I'm not going to be the kind of man who humiliates his son publicly. Even after betrayal. I'm not going to give this town gossip to chew on for the next 5 years. I'm not going to reduce my relationship with my son, broken as it is, to a story people tell over dinner. I protected my house. I stood my ground. I enforced a contract Derek signed willingly. That's enough. Some people will think I'm being cold, difficult, stubborn. They'll assume I drove Derek away with my stubbornness, or that I'm too proud to compromise. Let them think about it. My conscience is clear. I defended myself without cruelty. I enforced a contract Derek signed willingly. I didn't cheat, didn't lie, didn't manipulate. And I'm not going to trash my son's name to make myself look better. Because at the end of the day, he's still my son. Even if he doesn't act like it, even if we never speak again, that's enough. People say family is everything, but I learned that love without respect isn't family. It's just an obligation, and I don't owe anyone my dignity. Let me tell you what this whole experience taught me. It's not a lesson I wanted to learn, but at 75, you don't get to pick which truths come knocking on your door. You just open it and deal with what's standing there. Family isn't a blank check. I spent most of my life believing it was, believing that because Derek was my son, my blood, I owed him unconditional support, unconditional forgiveness, unconditional sacrifice. And maybe when he was a kid that made sense, when he was learning to walk, learning right from wrong, learning how to be a man. Yeah, he needed that kind of love, the kind that doesn't keep score, the kind that picks you up no matter how many times you fall. But Derek's not a kid anymore. He's 49 years old, a grown man with a career, a wife, a life of his own. And at some point, I can't tell you exactly when, the rules changed. At some point, love has to run both ways. Respect has to be mutual. And if it's not, then what you've got isn't a relationship. It's just one person taking and another person giving until there's nothing left to give. That's what Derek wanted from me. To take, to cash in on the house I built, the life I worked for, the security I'd spent 47 years creating, and leave me with whatever scraps he thought were appropriate for my age. And for a while, I felt guilty about stopping him. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, am I being stubborn? Am I being selfish? Should I have just let him sell it? I'd think about how much money he needed, how stressed he must be, how disappointed Margaret would be if she knew we'd ended up like this. I'd wonder if I was choosing a house over my son, if I was putting pride ahead of family. But then I'd remember the way he walked in here, the way he looked at me, the way he said, "Start packing, old man." And I'd realize he wasn't asking for help. He was demanding surrender. There's a difference. If Derek had come to me honestly, if he'd sat down at this table and said, "Dad, Vanessa and I are struggling. We made mistakes. We need help," I would have listened. I would have tried to work something out. Maybe not $50,000, but something. A smaller loan, financial advice, a plan. But that's not what he did. He didn't come as a son. He came as a creditor, with a contract, a buyer, and a 6-week eviction notice. And if I'd rolled over, if I'd said, "Okay, Derek, you win, take the house," what would he have learned? He'd have learned that cruelty works, that if you push hard enough, treat someone badly enough, they'll give you what you want, just to make you stop. He'd have learned that his father was weak, that I could be bullied, that respect was optional as long as you had leverage. I wasn't going to teach him that lesson. Not at 75, not after everything I'd built, everything Margaret and I had worked for. So I stood my ground. And yes, it cost me my son, maybe forever. I don't know. Derek hasn't called. I haven't written. Hasn't shown up at the door to apologize or explain or try to make things right. And that breaks my heart. It does. But you know what would have broken me? Giving in, rolling over, letting him take my home, the home where I held Margaret's hand the night she died, where we raised him, where every corner holds a memory, just to keep the peace with a man who didn't respect me enough to read the contract he signed. That would have broken me, because self-respect isn't selfish. It's survival. I've spent my whole life trying to be a good man, a good husband, a good father. I worked hard, paid my bills, kept my word, and treated people fairly. I didn't cheat, didn't steal, didn't cut corners, and I'm not going to throw all that away, throw away my dignity, my home, my peace of mind, because my son decided I was in his way. Family is important. I believe that. But family has to be built on something more than blood. It has to be built on respect, on love that goes both directions, on the understanding that you don't hurt the people you claim to care about. And if that foundation isn't there, then what you've got isn't family. It's just people who share a name. I hope Derek figures that out someday. I hope he looks back on this and understands why I did what I did. Not to hurt him, not to punish him, but to protect myself, to stand up for what was mine. To refuse to be treated like I was already gone. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. And I don't owe anyone an apology for that. I wrote my son a letter I'll never send, because some things need to be said, even if no one ever hears them. It's late, past midnight. The house is quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood settling. I'm sitting at the kitchen table with a pen and a piece of paper, the same table where Margaret and I used to sit and pay bills, plan vacations, talk about Derek's report cards. I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe because I can't sleep. Maybe because there are words stuck in my chest that need to come out, even if they'll never be read. I write, Derek, I don't know if you'll ever see this. Probably not, but I need to say it anyway. I've been thinking a lot about the day you were born, March 14th, 1976. Your mother was in labor for 12 hours. I held her hand the whole time, and when you finally came, red-faced and screaming, she looked at me and said, "We made that," like we'd built something together, like you were a house we'd framed and roofed and filled with love. I remember teaching you to fish at Lake Anna when you were 7. You were so patient, sitting on that dock with your little rod, waiting for a bite, and when you finally caught that bluegill, God, the look on your face, pure joy. You held it up like it was a trophy and I took a picture. Your mother framed it. It's still on the mantle. I remember your high school graduation. You were valedictorian. Your mother cried through your whole speech. I was so proud I thought my chest would burst. I thought, this is what it's all for. This moment. Watching my son stand up in front of everyone and prove that he's smart, capable, good. I don't know when things changed. Maybe they didn't. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. But I need you to understand something. I didn't refuse to help you because I'm cruel, or stubborn, or senile. I refused because what you asked me to do wasn't help. It was surrender. You didn't come to me as a son. You came to me as someone who'd already decided I was in the way. Someone who looked at the house where you grew up, the house where your mother died, and saw nothing but money. And I couldn't let that stand. Not because I wanted to hurt you, but because I had to survive you. I know you're angry. I know you think I tricked you or manipulated you or set you up to fail. But Derek, all I did was protect myself with a legal document you had every opportunity to read. A document you signed without asking a single question. That's not my fault. That's yours. I hope one day you understand why I did this. I hope you look back and realize that a man, any man, has the right to defend what's his, to stand his ground, to refuse to be bullied, even by his own son. And I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, the money, the security, the life you think you deserve. I hope you get it, and I hope it makes you happy. But I also hope you learn something from this, that the people you love aren't resources to be liquidated. That family means more than convenience. That respect matters, even when it costs you something. I love you, Derek. I always will. But I can't let you take my home. I can't let you take my dignity. Not even for you. Dad, I set the pen down. Read the letter over once. Twice. My hand is shaking. Not much, but enough to notice. I fold the paper carefully. 3 folds, neat and even. Then I walk to the living room, open the bottom drawer of my desk, and place it inside, next to the fireproof box where I keep Margaret's wedding ring and our marriage certificate. I close the drawer. Then I walk back to the kitchen, pour myself 2 fingers of bourbon, Maker's Mark, the bottle Derek gave me for Christmas 3 years ago, and sit back down at the table. The bourbon burns going down, warm and familiar. I think about Margaret, about what she'd say if she were here. She'd probably tell me I did the right thing, that standing up for myself wasn't cruel. It was necessary. But she'd also be sad, so sad, because she loved Derek with a fierceness I could never quite match. And she'd hate knowing that the boy we raised together, the boy we built a life for, turned into someone who'd do this. I finished the bourbon, rinse the glass, turn off the kitchen light, and as I walk upstairs to bed, I realize something. Writing that letter didn't change anything. Derek will never read it. I will never know what I wanted to say. But I feel lighter somehow, like I've set down something heavy I didn't realize I was carrying. Some things need to be said, even if no one ever hears them, even if the only person listening is you. I thought losing my son would break me, but what I found instead was something I'd forgotten. I don't need anyone's permission to be at peace. It's been 6 months since Derek walked out of this house. 6 months since the lawyer's call, Vanessa's email, the silence that followed. At first, the quiet was unbearable. I'd hear a car door slam and think it might be him. I'd check my phone compulsively, hoping for a text, a missed call, something. But as the weeks turned into months, the hoping stopped, and in its place, something else grew. Not happiness exactly, not yet, but something close to it, something that felt like relief. I started filling my days differently. In September, I signed up for a woodworking class at the community college. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 6 to 8. I'm building a bookshelf, oak, like the floors in this house. The instructor, a guy named Ray, who's maybe 10 years younger than me, says I've got good hands, that I'm patient. That patience is the most important tool in the shop. I like being in that workshop. The smell of sawdust, the hum of the sander, the way the wood feels under my fingers, rough and then smooth, transforming with care and attention. There's a kid in my neighborhood, Marcus, 12 years old, lives 3 doors down, who's trying to build a birdhouse for a school project. His dad works long hours, doesn't have time to help, so Marcus knocked on my door one Saturday morning and asked if I knew anything about carpentry. I taught him how to measure twice and cut once, how to drill a pilot hole so the wood doesn't split, how to sand with the grain, not against it. Last week, he brought me a photo of the finished birdhouse, hung in his backyard. A blue jay had already moved in. "Thanks, Mr. Hayes," he said, grinning. I got an A. I told him the blue jay was the real judge, and that an A from a blue jay is worth more than an A from a teacher. He laughed, promised to come back next time he needed to build something. I volunteer at the Historical Society now too, Wednesday afternoons, helping catalog old property deeds, survey maps, photographs of Richmond from the 20s and 30s. It's quiet work, detailed, the kind of thing that requires focus and care. I like it. I've been working on the house too, not because I have to, because I want to. I repainted the shutters in October, hunter green, the same color Margaret picked 47 years ago, replaced 3 boards on the front porch that had started to rot, restained the back deck, winterized the pipes in November, the way I used to do with Derek before he stopped coming around, and I've been tending Margaret's garden, the one she started in the backyard, where she grew tomatoes and basil and zinnias every summer. I let it go for a few years after she died. Couldn't bring myself to touch it. But this spring, I cleared the weeds, turned the soil, planted tomatoes again. They grew, big, red, heavy on the vine. I picked them in August and made sauce the way Margaret used to, slow cooked with garlic and basil, jarred and stored in the pantry. I gave a jar to Paul next door, another to Marcus's mom, kept the rest for myself. It felt good, felt like I was bringing something back to life. The house feels different now, lighter somehow, less haunted by what might have been. I don't think about Derek every day anymore. Some mornings I wake up and realize I haven't thought about him in a week, that the first thing on my mind isn't the betrayal or the anger or the sadness. It's what I'm going to build in woodworking class, or whether the tomatoes need watering, or if Marcus wants help with his next project. And on those mornings, I feel something I haven't felt in years. Grateful for my health, for this house, for the dogwood tree blooming white every April, for the quiet routines that fill my days, for the fact that at 75, I can still swing a hammer, sand a board, turn soil, and grow something. I don't need Derek's approval to live a full life. I don't need his presence to feel whole. I'm enough, just as I am. Just me, in this house, doing the work I love, helping the people who need it. And that realization, that quiet, hard-won understanding, is its own kind of freedom. I thought losing my son would break me, but what it did instead was remind me of something I'd forgotten. I've always been strong enough to stand on my own. I just had to be willing to do it. And now I am. The house is still mine. Life is still mine. The peace is still mine, and that's enough. It's been almost a year now since Derek walked out of this house. The dogwood tree is blooming again, white petals bright against the April sky, just like they were that morning when everything changed. I'm sitting in my armchair, the same one I've sat in for 40 years, brown leather, worn smooth in all the right places. Tom filed the reversion paperwork with the court a few months ago. The house is legally mine again, fully, completely. No life estate, no conditions, no clauses, just mine. Derek never contested it, never called, never wrote. I've made my peace with that. The bookshelf I built in woodworking class is finished now. It's standing against the wall in the living room, filled with Margaret's favorite books, the ones I couldn't bring myself to give away. The oak matches the floors perfectly. Ray said it was some of the best work he'd seen from a first-time student. Marcus brought another kid from his school last month, Tommy, 9 years old, working on a science project that required building a small bridge. I spent 3 Saturdays with those boys, teaching them about load-bearing structures and tension and the importance of checking your measurements. The bridge held. Tommy won second place at the science fair. His mother brought me a thank you card and a plate of cookies, said I was a blessing to the neighborhood, that if I ever needed anything at all, just to ask. I thanked her, told her the boys were good company, that teaching them reminded me of what it felt like to build something that mattered. I sleep better now. The house doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels full of memories, yes, but also full of purpose, full of the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing I stood my ground when it mattered most. I don't know if Derek thinks about me. I don't know if he regrets what he did, or if he's moved on completely, pretending I never existed. Part of me hopes he's learned something, that somewhere in the mess he made of his life and his finances, he figured out that relationships aren't transactions, that family isn't about what you can get from someone, that respect matters more than money. But I'm not counting on it, because I've learned my own lessons. I've learned that you can love someone and still say no to them, that protecting yourself isn't the same as abandoning them, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their worst impulses. I've learned that a house isn't just wood and stone and nails. It's the accumulation of every choice you make, every sacrifice you accept, every hour you pour into making something last. And I've learned that at 75 years old, I'm not done yet, not done building, not done teaching, not done living a life that matters. This house, my house, will stand long after I'm gone, and when that day comes, maybe it'll pass to someone who understands what it cost, someone who sees the craftsmanship in the oak floors, the care in the stone fireplace, the love in every corner. Or maybe it'll be sold to strangers who'll gut it and renovate it and erase every trace of the life Margaret and I built here. I can't control that. I can only control what I do with the time I have left, and what I'm doing is living, fully, honestly, with dignity intact and conscience clear. I stood my ground. I protected what was mine. I refused to be pushed aside, and in the end, that was enough. The dogwood tree blooms. The house stands. The armchair holds me, just like it always has, and I am at peace.